A $1 bottle of 3% hydrogen peroxide will lift the black mildew freckles off your white vinyl without eating the stitching, brighten a gray bimini, unyellow the sun-baked plastic on your helm, and fix the bleach taste in your freshwater tank. And I've got 11 jobs for it on a boat, in the order I'd actually do them, including 3 the marine trade would rather you never tried. And 1 I'm going to tell you flat out not to do at all. I've had enough mildewed cushions apart to know that the black spots on the outside are the last thing that happens, not the first. And I've bought the marine bottle, the one with the wave on the label and the word professional on it, 16 ounces, sitting on the chandlery shelf at around $10 to $12, depending on the day and the store. The pharmacy bottle beside my sink is 32 ounces of 3% peroxide for $1. That's about 3 cents an ounce against something north of 60. Hold that arithmetic, because by the end of this, you'll know exactly what the extra money is buying, and it isn't what the front of the bottle implies. Here's the strange part about this stuff. At the concentration in that brown pharmacy bottle, it's so mild it's sold for cuts. Take the same molecule up to 80 or 90%, and navies used it as torpedo propellant, and it is the reason a Russian submarine and 118 men are on the bottom of the Barents Sea. That's item 10. And it's not a horror story for its own sake. It comes with the single most important handling rule on this list, and it involves the brass fittings that are all over your boat. 2 more things to wait for. Item 5 is the only job on a freshwater system where peroxide genuinely beats bleach, and the dose is a teaspoon per 20 gallons. That's it. That's the whole trick. And almost nobody tells you. Item 6 is the popular one I think is wrong, and the people who love it are going to want to argue with me. Good. Bring numbers. Let's start with what this liquid actually does, because everything else follows from it. Hydrogen peroxide is water carrying 1 extra oxygen atom, and that atom cannot wait to leave. Think of a guy on the dock holding a coiled line he's desperate to hand to somebody. The second the peroxide meets something willing to take that oxygen, it lets go. And whatever took it comes out chemically changed. The technical word is oxidation. Forget the word and picture the handoff. What gets changed, in cleaning terms, is color. A stain is a molecule shaped in a way that absorbs some wavelengths of light and throws the rest back at your eye, which is why you see black spots and not clear ones. Break that shape and the color stops existing. The stain doesn't get lifted out and carried away like dirt in soapy water. It gets destroyed in place. That is the whole reason this stuff is good on a boat, and the whole reason it lies to you. Peroxide is superb at erasing the visible evidence of something organic. It is far less good at killing the thing that produced the evidence, especially when that thing is living an inch below the surface in a piece of foam you can't reach. Every one of these 11 items sits somewhere on that line. And the running question through all of them is the same. Am I fixing this? Or am I just making it invisible until August? One more thing worth knowing. The fizz isn't magic, and it isn't proof of disinfection. Living tissue and blood are full of an enzyme called catalase, whose entire job is tearing peroxide apart, which is why it foams like mad on a cut finger and does nothing at all on clean gel coat. Fizz means it found organic material. That's all it means. Number 1, black mildew spotting on white vinyl upholstery. This is the job that made peroxide famous with boat owners, and it deserves the reputation. Mix it about 1 part peroxide to 1 or 2 parts water, Add a few drops of dish soap so it clings instead of running off, and put it on the spots with a soft brush. Then leave it alone for 10 to 15 minutes. That dwell time is the whole job. Most people spray, scrub for 8 seconds, see nothing, and go get the bleach. The reason you're not going straight to bleach is the thread. Virtually every vinyl maker warns against chlorine bleach on their material. And the reason is that the polyester and nylon thread holding your cushions together gives up long before the vinyl does. There's a well-known magazine test where a cushion was cleaned with bleach and looked great. And a year later, the vinyl was noticeably less supple, the stitching had visibly deteriorated, and the mildew had come back worse than before. That's the trade you're being offered. A clean-looking seat now, popped seams in 2 seasons. Skip the magic eraser too, whatever the internet says. Those work by abrading a thin layer off the vinyl surface. It looks clean because you removed the part that was stained, and you've left a slightly rougher, more porous surface for the next colony to settle into. And here's the caveat nobody selling you anything wants to lead with. If mildew has been growing in there a while, it's in the foam. You can clear the surface and kill what's on it, and you'll buy yourself a season, maybe 2, in a humid climate. But unless the foam comes out, it's coming back. That's not a failure of the peroxide. That's the honest ceiling on any spray. Which brings me to something worse than mildew, and it looks nothing like it. If your white vinyl has gone faintly pink or blotchy purple in patches, stop scrubbing. That is not mildew, and no cleaner on earth will touch it. It's a dye excreted by a bacterium that lives between the foam and the underside of the vinyl and feeds on the plasticizer that makes PVC flexible. It gets in through the stitch holes. Once the dye has migrated into the vinyl, it cannot be cleaned out. The material itself is stained from within. Worth knowing before you spend a Saturday in a bottle of anything trying. Number 2. Canvas, covers, sail bags, and life jackets. Same logic, higher stakes because canvas is where bleach does its most expensive damage. Bleach-based cleaners should never go near nylon fabric or nylon stitching. They weaken the fiber. And the coatings that make marine canvas shed water and survive sunlight are the first casualty of an aggressive wash. Peroxide is the gentler oxidizer here, and it's not just my opinion. When a boating test lab ran 14 mildew sprays across mildewed shower curtains, moldy cushions, life jackets, a Dacron sail, and sunbrella, several of the chlorine-free products in that lineup worked by peroxide chemistry. One of their own readers reported getting the best results from the plain drugstore bottle in a spray bottle on cloth, teak, leather, and vinyl, with no damage to the surface. The trade-off is real. Peroxide is slower and it wants dwell time and a soft brush, where bleach is instant and brutal. 2 warnings on canvas. Lay it flat and work in the shade, not draped on the frame where the runoff streaks. And when you're done and it's dry, you have to reproof it. Cleaning strips water repellency no matter what you clean it with. And a spotless bimini that leaks on your chart plotter isn't a win. If you were planning to hit your bimini with the pressure washer this weekend, and I know somebody is, that's how you drive spores deeper into the weave and blow out stitching that was going to last another 5 years. Soft brush, patience. Come back to it twice. Number 3. Test your bottle before you trust it. Quick one, and it explains most of the failures people blame on the method. Peroxide is unstable by nature. It's constantly, quietly turning into water and oxygen whether you use it or not. Sealed and stored cool and dark, a bottle holds up for a year or 3. Sources put the loss somewhere between about 0.5% and 2% a year, and I'll take the pessimistic end. Once you break the seal, the honest range collapses to something like 1 to 6 months of full strength. And the numbers you'll read vary a lot depending on who's writing. Heat roughly doubles the decomposition rate for every 18 degrees Fahrenheit you add. Light attacks it, which is why it comes in an opaque bottle. Now think about where that bottle has been living. In a cockpit locker. On a boat. In July. Uncapped since last season. What you've got there is expensive water with a nice label. The test takes 4 seconds. Pour a splash in the sink. Fresh peroxide fizzes on contact with the drain grime. Dead peroxide just sits there looking like water, which is what it is. Keep it in the original bottle, in the coolest dark locker you have, and buy it small, and often rather than by the gallon. Notice the pattern forming across the first 3. Every one of them is really about time and moisture rather than chemistry. Dwell time, drying time, storage time. The next batch moves outdoors and gets more physical. And the 5th one is the water tank trick I promised, which is the single most useful 60 seconds in this whole list. Number 4. Teak, non-skid, and gray weathered wood. Peroxide's other identity is a powder. Sodium percarbonate. The oxygen bleach in tubs of color-safe laundry booster and in most powdered deck cleaners is chemically soda ash and hydrogen peroxide bonded together. Drop it in warm water, and it releases peroxide and washing soda. That's it. That's the whole product. For teak that's gone silver gray and greasy, this is the right tool. And here's the engineering reason. Chlorine bleach reacts with the first thing it meets, which on porous wood means the surface. And it can break down the wood fibers and leave you with a fuzzy, raised grain that holds dirt worse than before. Oxygen bleach penetrates and works below the surface where the growth actually roots at a pH the wood can live with. The 2-part acid cleaners you buy in the marine aisle are usually a strong cleaner followed by oxalic acid as a brightener, and they work. Oxalic is also the only thing that touches rust and tannin bleeding, which peroxide will not do at all. But they're aggressive, and teak decks in this world die by erosion, one scrub at a time. Mix the powder, keep the deck wet, scrub across the planks, and lightly, never along the grain with a stiff brush. And step away from the pressure washer. Nobody has ever gained deck thickness with one. Number 5. Neutralising bleach in the freshwater system. Here's the one I flagged, and I want to be careful, because the popular version of this is wrong. Peroxide is a poor tank sanitizer at drugstore strength. Practical Sailor put it about as bluntly as it can be put. By itself, it's basically useless for sanitizing water. The people who do disinfect water with peroxide industrially use something like 30,000 parts per million with a 2-hour contact time. And the household bottle isn't in that conversation. The standard procedure for a boat is the recreational vehicle one out of ANSI A1019.2. Multiply your tank capacity in gallons by 0.13, and that's your ounces of household bleach. Roughly a quarter cup per 15 gallons. So do it with bleach. And then live with the smell for a week, because that's the part everybody hates and the part that sends people looking for alternatives in the first place. That's where peroxide earns its place. Once you've drained and refilled twice and you can still taste chlorine, add about a teaspoon of peroxide per 20 gallons and mix it through. The peroxide oxidizes the hypochlorite into ordinary chloride, salt, and oxygen, and the smell is simply gone. Any excess peroxide left over is harmless and tasteless. Peroxides are already the active ingredient in several of the commercial water freshening products people buy for exactly this problem. One thing not to do. Don't put both in at the same time, hoping to double up. They cancel each other out, which defeats the entire point of the bleach. That's 5. We're at the halfway shelf. And if it's useful so far, subscribing costs you nothing and keeps this stuff coming. 6 is the one I'd argue against, and I'd rather you heard both sides properly than took my word for it. Number 6. Oxygenating a livewell. My answer is no. The practice has been around for decades. A well-known figure in bass fishing popularized it. The dose usually quoted is 1 ounce of 3% peroxide per 3 gallons, about 5 ounces in a 15-gallon well. And at least one bait tank manufacturer publishes that same ratio on its own tips page for hot weather or an overcrowded well. The logic is straightforward. The molecule carries a spare oxygen atom. It releases oxygen into the water, and unlike your aerator, it doesn't care whether your battery is flat. The counter-argument is not from a rival product salesman. The BASS Fish Care Manual, Keeping Bass Alive, put a do not use warning on it in a box you couldn't miss. The mechanism they're worried about is specific. A bass has a mucus coat protecting its skin, and its gill filaments do not. Peroxide is an oxidizer. Anglers guessing at doses in a rocking boat is not the same as measuring. Here's the part that makes the disagreement interesting rather than stupid. Peroxide absolutely is a legitimate fish drug. In 2007, the FDA approved a 35% peroxide product for hatchery use, including controlling mortality in freshwater finfish eggs from a fungal infection. So the objection can't be that peroxide and fish never mix. Where I come down is on dose control. A hatchery measures concentration, temperature, and exposure time, and it can dump the treatment when it's done. You've got a bucket, a rolling deck, warm water, and fish you intend to release at a scale in 4 hours. And even the advocates concede the oxygen bump is short-lived. Fix the aeration, add ice, carry fewer fish. If you've done it for 20 years with no losses, tell me in the comments and tell me your water temperature, because that's the variable that decides it. Number 7. Reversing yellowed white plastic. This one feels like a party trick, and it's real chemistry. Old white and light gray ABS plastic, switch panels, hatch handles, cooler lids, the trim around your instruments. Goes yellow because bromine-based flame retardants in the plastic break down under ultraviolet and heat. Peroxide plus UV or gentle warmth reverses the discoloration and brings the color back close to original. The retro computer crowd worked out the recipe on yellowed home computers, and it works exactly the same on boat plastic. Practically, the drugstore 3% will do it slowly in a sunny tub over a day or two. 12%, which is what a bottle of 40-volume clear hair developer is, works far faster as a gel you can brush on. Clean the part properly first, keep the liquid under about 120 degrees so nothing warps, and turn or recoat it so you don't get streaks. Now the honest part, and it's the reason I put this at 7 instead of 1. It's cosmetic only. It does not undo the aging, and it does not put strength back into plastic that's gone brittle. And it may not last. One collector ran a genuinely useful long test. Taped off part of a console so it got no peroxide and no UV, treated the rest, and came back 10 years later. The treated surfaces had yellowed significantly and gone blotchy and streaked. The untreated ones hadn't. That's one test on one part, not a study, and I'd love more data. But if the piece is structural or irreplaceable, think twice before you bleach it. Number 8. Fish blood, bait slime, and organic stains on gel coat and non-skid. Straightforward, and it's where the fizz actually tells you something. Blood is loaded with catalase, so peroxide foams on it and takes the color out fast. Same for bait slime, bird droppings, and the general gray-brown film in a rod locker. The useful part is the boundary. If the stain came from something that was alive, peroxide has a real chance. If it came from metal or from the water, rust weeping out of a fastener, the tannin stain from a tea-colored river, that hard waterline band, peroxide will do essentially nothing because there's no organic color molecule there to break. That's oxalic acid work, and buying the wrong bottle for the wrong stain is most of what people mean when they say a cleaner didn't work. Number 9, your first aid kit. Take it out. Short item. Peroxide's oldest job is the one it's worst at. Current thinking is that it delays wound healing and shouldn't be used on cuts and scrapes at all. It damages the tissue trying to repair the wound along with anything else. Fish hooks and fillet knives being what they are. That matters on a boat. Irrigate with clean water. Use mild soap around the wound. Cover it. Keep the peroxide for the vinyl. Number 10. What it must never touch, and why a submarine is on the seabed. Peroxide decomposes on its own slowly. Give it a catalyst and slowly becomes instantly. And the catalysts that matter to you are metals, copper, brass, ordinary boat plumbing. In June 1955, the Royal Navy submarine Sidon was loading an experimental torpedo fueled with high-test peroxide, alongside its depot ship in Portland Harbor. A pipe let go, concentrated peroxide reached copper fittings inside the torpedo casing, and it flashed to steam and oxygen with an enormous increase in volume inside a sealed metal tube. No warhead involved. The casing burst, blew out the forward bulkhead, and the submarine sank at the quayside. 13 men died. The British stopped using peroxide torpedoes. The Russians kept theirs because the fuel was cheap. On the 12th of August 2000, a faulty weld in a practice torpedo leaked high-test peroxide inside the tube aboard the Kursk. The first blast wrecked the torpedo room. The fire set off more warheads about 2 minutes later. A detonation big enough to register on seismographs across northern Europe. 118 dead. Same molecule as your brown bottle. Different concentration, same handoff of the same spare oxygen atom. You are not going to blow up a locker with 3%. But scale the lesson down, and it gives you 3 real rules. Never store peroxide in a metal container or leave it standing in a brass fitting. Never mix it with vinegar in one bottle. That slowly makes peracetic acid, an industrial oxidizing acid that irritates eyes and lungs. And a sealed spray bottle of it keeps generating oxygen gas until the bottle bulges. Use them one after the other with a rinse between if you want both. And never mix it with bleach or any bleach-based marine cleaner. If you want the third rule short, nothing goes in the bottle but peroxide. Number 11. Diesel bug, and the limit of the whole idea. People ask about dosing a fuel tank because the growth in diesel is microbial and peroxide kills microbes. I'll mark this as my reasoning rather than a tested fact because I've never found a marine fuel biocide with peroxide in it, and I think the reason is simple. Household peroxide is 97% water. The bug in diesel lives at the fuel-water interface at the bottom of the tank, and water is the thing it needs. Pouring water into a tank to kill a water-loving organism is the wrong direction. Get the water out, keep the tank full, and use a product actually registered for fuel. Which is a decent place to talk about what you're really buying when you buy the marine bottle. Go and read the back of a marine mildew remover, not the front, where it says professional grade and mildew stain remover and marine tested. The other side, in the small print. One of the biggest sellers in the category states plainly that it does not control mold, mildew, fungus, or algae. It only removes stains. Another listing for the same product spells out that it's designed to remove the stains caused by mold, mildew, fungus, and algae, rather than acting as a pesticide. Read that again, because it's an extraordinary sentence to find on a bottle called a mildew remover. It removes the mark. It is not claiming to kill the organism that made the mark, and that wording is not sloppiness or modesty. In the United States, the moment a cleaning product claims to kill, control, or mitigate a living pest, it becomes a pesticide under federal law, and it needs EPA registration with efficacy data and approved label language. Claiming only to clean or remove stains from mold, mildew, or algae keeps a product outside that whole system. So the lawyers write the honest sentence on the back. The marketing department writes the implication on the front, and you read the front. Now put the numbers on it. 16 ounces, roughly $10 to $12, depending on where you shop. And prices move, so check your own. 32 ounces of 3% peroxide, $1. Somewhere around 20 times the price per ounce, and the expensive one concedes in writing that it does not kill what you're trying to get rid of. Here's the sting, and it's not really about the money. Both bottles are doing the same job, deleting the evidence. The colony is in the foam, under the vinyl, in the seams. So every spring, the spots come back. And every spring, you conclude the product ran out, rather than that it was never sold to you as a cure. That's not a conspiracy. Nobody had to plan it. It's just that a bottle which erases a symptom every year is a better business than a sentence explaining that your cushions need new foam and 40 minutes of drying after every trip. A recurring purchase beats a one-time truth. You are not going to be sold that again because you now know which side of the bottle to read. And you know the word remover was chosen by somebody with a very precise reason for choosing it. There's something quietly satisfying underneath all this, and it isn't outrage. Almost everything on this list came from somebody working out what a common material actually does and then using it on purpose. A powder in the laundry aisle turns out to be peroxide bonded to washing soda, so it cleans a teak deck without shredding the grain. A bottle for scraped knees turns out to be the gentlest oxidizer you can put on stitched canvas. Hair developer whitens a helm panel because the same chemistry that lightens hair lightens degraded plastic. That's not thrift exactly. It's the difference between knowing what something is and knowing what aisle it was shelved in. One of those travels with you to every problem you'll ever have on a boat. The other has to be repurchased, relabeled, and re-explained to you every season by somebody with an interest in the answer. The old hands in every trade I've ever worked in had a short list of plain materials and a very long list of things they knew about them. And they were never at anyone's mercy on a Sunday afternoon. So, the run-through, and then a procedure worth more than the list. Vinyl mildew, 1-to-1, or 1-to-2 with water. A few drops of dish soap, 10 to 15 minutes. Soft brush, rinse, dry completely. Canvas, same mix, flat. In the shade, twice if needed. Reproof after. Storage, brown bottle, cool, dark. Fizz test before you trust it. Teak and non-skid. Sodium percarbonate powder in warm water. Keep it wet. Scrub lightly across the grain. Freshwater tank. Bleach at 0.13 ounces per gallon for the sanitizing. Then a teaspoon of peroxide per 20 gallons to kill the taste. Livewell. No. Yellowed white plastic. 12% and sunlight under 120 degrees. Cosmetic only. Blood and slime on gel coat. Neat. Let it foam. Cuts. Don't. Never in metal. Never with vinegar. Never with bleach. Fuel. Wrong tool. and the procedure for every stain you meet that isn't on this list. Ask 3 questions. Did this come from something that was alive? Yes means peroxide has a chance. No means you want an acid instead. Would chlorine bleach wreck this surface or the thread holding it together? If yes, peroxide is your default, not your fallback. And can I get this properly dry afterwards? Because if the answer is no, you're booking the same job again in 6 weeks, no matter what's in the bottle. 3 questions, 30 seconds, and it works on surfaces I've never seen. Do it this weekend on 1 seat. Not the whole boat. 1 seat, 1 bottle, 15 minutes of dwell time while you do something else. By the time you towel it dry, you'll know 2 things you can't get from any label: whether your peroxide is still alive, and whether your mildew is on the vinyl or in the foam. That second answer is the one that decides what next spring costs you. Tell me where you're watching from, and whether your boat sits in fresh or salt. I'm asking for a specific reason. That pink staining bacterium doesn't survive in salt water and turns up mostly on freshwater boats, and humidity changes the mildew story completely. The same cushion behaves like a different object in Louisiana and in Maine. So, your water, your climate, and what actually worked on your seats. Corrections welcome too. If you've handled the concentrated stuff professionally and I've oversimplified something about it, say so plainly and I'll take it on the chin. I read the replies and I steal the good ideas without shame. Subscribe if you want more of this kind of thing. The plain material and what it really does, rather than the label. I'll admit there's one thread I deliberately didn't pull today, and it's the foam. Not the vinyl, not the thread, the block of open cell foam underneath. That every one of these problems eventually traces back to, and what the better upholsterers have quietly started specifying instead. I've been reading about the antimicrobial additives that got restricted and what replaced them, and I don't understand it well enough yet to talk about it. When I do, you'll hear it here. Until then, dwell time, dry it properly, and read the back of the bottle.